Okay, so my name's Kim Snyder. I'm VP of Data Strategy at Roundtable Technology. And it's so great to be doing another one of these workshops for Cerini Associates. It's such an important gathering for us to get together and talk about technology. And I will now, Joshua, you introduce
Absolutely. My name is
a
Joshua Peskin.
longtime colleague. Yes.
I'm Joshua Peskin through CPO. Many apologies for my slightly late arrival, and apologies for making anyone at Cerini or NRH a little nervous. But anyway, is happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. All right, let's jump in. All right, so today we're going to kind of be jumping around a little bit into different topics. And so we're going to start with talking about frameworks around how to kind of govern technology at a nonprofit organization. We're going to talk a little bit about shadow IT, sounds a little spooky, talk about cybersecurity and securing your castle. And of course, we couldn't do a technology presentation in 2024 without talking about AI, could we, Kim? I don't think we could.
No, no.
It's been almost 90 minutes since we did a AI workshop, so
Yes.
more AI. All right, so,
Perfect.
all right, so framework, frame not work. All right, so if anyone's ever like set a SMART goal, for example, that is an example of a framework, right? So you have a goal that is, I forget what SMART stands for, but specific, right? Actionable,
Actionable.
right? Measurable, all these other things, right? So that's just an example of a very simple framework that one would have. And it's a guideline to kind of govern a process. So a technology framework for nonprofits, by the way, this is one that Kim and I kind of came up with, although it's quite a stretch to say we invented this, because we're borrowing from like the NIST cybersecurity framework, we're borrowing from other kinds of business frameworks and other things that all kind of help. But so there's these 6 what are referred to as functions within this framework, which is number 1, you kind of, and I don't know if the slides work through it. Yes, here we go. So we identify, right, what is the mission of our organization, where are we kind of at now, what are the challenges we're facing, where do we want to go, what are our goals, what are our objectives, what is technology supposed to do, how do we govern this on an ongoing basis, how do we manage our data, that's the inform, how do we protect things, that's the cybersecurity, how do we project manage, right? Project management seems maybe a little bit outside of a kind of framework, right, that has its own framework. But Kim and I feel, and I can't say this strongly enough, you can't do things, right, fundamentally, right, going from A to B as a project, right? I have to be able to identify some problem, come up with a plan to solve the problem, implement that plan, and then see if the problem is solved. That's a project. And being able to do those is kind of the key to doing everything else. And then how do we evolve and iterate over time to kind of identify emerging needs and change things? All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about governance. All right. We're going to focus on that. All right, Kim.
Now they are all interrelated, but there is a unifying theme here, okay? And that is around governance and the importance of governance in IT in general in 2024. But first, let's look at the shadows. Now, this is our first poll, and I think Kelly will run this for us. This is a little bit true confessions. So do any of you use any tools or applications at your job that were not really provided or approved by IT at your organization? Okay, we have a no. Truthful one. Sometimes people.
Someone said no, but they're lying. That's good.
Okay,
We appreciate both the dishonesty and the honesty there.
Yeah. And as we can see, the majority, and we'll put in no lying in with the yeses there. My guess is not sure. You probably are too. And no truth might be like a legal organization would be my guess, or something like that. But the census, oops, so we're turning this out.
Yeah, I can make that go away when you want, but yeah, over 50% of the people are using shadow IT, and one person is not, but admits that they're lying about that.
Okay.
So closer to 60%.
Yeah.
All right.
So it is normal. Joshua and I do a ton of assessments for nonprofits, and we often find shadow IT in our conversations. In fact, So what is it? Okay, it's that stuff that no one really gave you, but and here's the thing about shadow IT. I have a little sympathy for it. I've used it. I've used shadow IT myself. I think Josh is a little guilty too, but we use it because it makes it easier for us to get certain tasks at work done. We don't use shadow IT because we want to be, say, bad. So that is like an assumption. But when we're thinking about 2024, when we're thinking about data privacy, when we're thinking about some of the things Josh is just about to talk about around cybersecurity, it can kind of raise a bunch of risks, right? So on the next slide, we talk about why does everyone do it? It's even worse now, right? Because it's so easy to get a cloud application. Lots of them don't even ask us to pay for money. We won't even talk about AI, though we will in a bit. But it's so easy to just sign up and start using tools, right? And most people aren't aware that if they put data into a system or use a system for some kind of data processing that wasn't really sanctioned, that there could be risks associated, right? Has everyone that's used AI, used shadow IT, read the terms of service of every shadow IT thing you've signed up for? No, right? It's fast. You don't have to like get permission. You don't have to hear someone say, no, you can't use that, right? And I venture to say in a world where a lot of organizations are hybrid or remote, or maybe even if you're back to work all the time, the whole kind of bring your own device, use your phone, work from home, that atmosphere makes it ever more prevalent, right? Easy to do, right? So what are the risks of using shadow IT? All right. So there's certain data risks. If one of these systems has data in it and it gets compromised, yes, we have had clients who, whoops, the Dropbox account, and then something happened and, oh, there was a bunch of work stuff in there. That is an unfortunate situation. And IT can't really help you much because they didn't set it up. They can't really monitor it either, right? So that can bring out compliance problems. You have cybersecurity risks, right? It's harder to, IT can't manage this stuff. So there's problems that happen like for organizations, for staff, when this comes in, that, you create certain gaps in your system. IT doesn't know how to support you using it. If you have a problem with it, you can call IT, but they may get kind of annoyed. And it's also, one of the ones, Josh was talking about the superpower of project management earlier. One of the easiest things to sign up for free is project management software. And on numerous occasions, we've kind of gone into organizations and folks are like, well, why can't we just collaborate? And it's like, okay, this one's using Asana, this one over here is using Trello, and someone else is using Basecamp. Well, this is just what our team got because it was easy. It was, all right, so why can't we collaborate? That's often part of the problem. They're all using different systems, and it makes it harder, especially for something like project management, which is all about collaboration and communication. And it also, I heard it explained at one presentation I went to. It's death by 1,000 licensing fees for organizations, right? So you have this licensing fee over here, that one over there, if people are paying for it, and you don't take advantage of any volume discounts because no one's signed up for it like intentionally like that as an organization. So, and your organization may already be paying for it.
This is just something I've been seeing more and more, and I'll try to be, but the silos thing, this happens in like a million ways. And like the reason I think fundamentally this happens is functions within an organization, want to solve their problems, but they don't care, in the absence of any reason to care, about how that fits within the context of the organization. So if Kim and I work at a widget factory and I make widgets and Kim sells widgets, right? I am interested in things that help me make widgets. I don't care if it integrates with the thing that Kim needs to sell widgets. Kim cares about something that sells widgets. So we both solve our own problems. I'm making widgets very effectively. She's selling widgets. At some point, we kind of say, Kim's like, I don't know how many widgets you have. And so I don't know how many I can sell because our systems are interrelated. And the reason that's happened is because we both solved our problem without any organizational saying, hey, they're going to need to kind of communicate someday because Kim will get an order for 1,000 widgets and be like, can I sell these? Can Josh make 1,000 widgets? Do they have it? Like, right. And that just happens over and over and over again. And that's how these silos get created. And it is a hard problem. It's really a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, sometimes people think they're protecting their data by creating, like, we'll get our own departmental Dropbox or Box account, and then no one can mess with our stuff. And that then you've created a silo and no one can help you if something goes wrong either. So governance, right? So we will keep coming back to this as a theme. So how do you deal with all this stuff? Like, oh my goodness, it's like going into like grandma's attic and it's full of stuff and no one's like looked at it for 10 years, right? So the first step, and we do have a resource on the next slide, we're going to talk about the tools you can use to do this, but you got to know what you have. So the first step, and this actually goes back to some of those 6 functions, right? Identify. And a lot of kind of healthy technology practice is about knowing where you're at. You cannot protect, you cannot inventory stuff that you don't know is there, right? So know what you have, know what's sanctioned and unsanctioned. It's okay to have some of it, just know it. Next, you
there are
want
2
to
things, Kim, that you and I know about every organization that's in this session today, which is 1, we don't know how much shadow IT you have, but we also know that you don't know either.
and we're guessing, we're betting the ranch that you have some. So
yeah, oh yeah.
And I'm not a betting person, but yeah. So that, and then it is possible to create policies for technology procurement, for getting IT, right? One of the reasons people often use shadow IT is because it can be really hard to get IT to like get that thing for you, right? So that's a little bit of IT culture, which is its own whole other webinar, which we can't go into today. But IT being an enabling service in the ideal world seeks to help people get their work done by getting them the tools they need safely. And then finally managing that and creating a process for ongoing management of new tools that includes assessments. So we do have some tools for you, right? We have one that we can give you. It's a tech stack inventory for those of you who don't want to go the automated route just yet. This actually works pretty well. And you just go around and you talk to different people, or you ask someone who works with you, go around and talk to everybody and see what they're using, right? And there's different colors, sanctioned and non-sanctioned IT, and you identify its owner. And if no one wants to cop to it, then you can leave that blank, but know what you have. There are other automated tools that make this a whole lot easier. Tori is one that we recommend highly. And as well as and Better Cloud is another one of these tools. And these kind of monitor it on an ongoing basis, and they're also designed to help you not just manage these tools and what you've got going on in your organization, but keeping track of the cost. Where could you save money? And so while these tools have a cost to them, I don't know if they've ever paid, I don't know how fast or what the rate is of them paying for themselves, but that's something to think about. It does keep costs down.
Yeah, Tori's ROI tends to be very good. It's a fairly low cost tool. Better Cloud's a little bit more expensive, but also does a lot of other things around security and governance.
So I think we then, yep.
Into cybersecurity, did you get everything you wanted there, Kim? Before I jump into cybersecurity?
No, I think I did. Well, now we're covering like 3 different areas. So we're covering a lot of ground today, but hopefully giving you some governance and essentials around each of these things.
All right. So I don't know if anyone's seen like Howl's Moving Castle, the wonderful Studio Ghibli film, or anything like that. But in the old school, so we're shifting into cybersecurity now, and as someone who's been in cybersecurity for a long time, there was this maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, still persists today, but 15, 20 years ago, we had this idea of that we had a castle, which was our office. And our office had a bunch of computers and servers and a network at it. And we sort of could build this moat around it, which we called a perimeter, right, in cybersecurity parlance. And usually you have like a firewall or different firewalls or other things like that. So basically, if I'm in the office, I'm kind of inside the moat. And if I'm outside the office, I'm outside the moat. And if some cyber criminal from outside the office tries to come in, they run into the crocodiles in the moat and they can't get into the castle. The problem is that that model doesn't work if your castle, like Howl's Moving Castle, is everywhere. All right. Where do you put the moat if your castle is just floating around in the sky? Okay. And so this is our next poll. So I'd like to ask, when is the last time you logged into a work system, Salesforce, Microsoft 365, Google, HubSpot, any system that you use for work, any of these cloud applications from a personal computer outside of your office? All right, so doing it now, we have a lot of people, right? Within the last week, sure, a couple of folks never, but yeah, this is more or less what we figured. I thought actually most of it would be within the last week. I feel like we have a good humored audience here, or they're just being very honest. So something on the order, if I'm looking at, let's see, 50, 70, around 80% of the people are either doing it now, within the last week, or within the last month. So that's about what we expected. Let me share those results just so folks can see. Yeah, so it's happening, just in case anyone was wondering about that. All right, thank you so much, Kelly.
Appreciate your honesty. Yep.
Yeah, we do. And so in the old days, right, this idea of, logging in from outside didn't exist, right? Like everything was inside the castle. And if, I wanted to check my email, go onto the web server, go onto accounting, check a file server, it was all in the castle. I wasn't doing any of that. Then, combination of things, but people started working from home, wanted to access. And we had this thing called VPN, or virtual private network. Many of you are probably familiar with it, where I kind of do this thing and I connect to my office systems from outside the office. And think of it like a drawbridge over the moat that you could open, let someone in, and then close off the drawbridge. It's kind of okay. Really came in handy during the pandemic, but also the cyber criminals found out that this was a great thing for them to use as well. Now, this is what it looks like today, okay? And we absolutely just verified this from a very quick poll, which is that, Kim is over here, not in the office, logging into Office 365, which is also not in our office, from a computer that may or may not be a computer that we even know anything about or manage. She's on a network we don't know anything about, right? I'm over here logging into our HR system. Again, I might be on a work computer, I might not. I might be on a network we know something about, I might not. But the idea that I would VPN here really doesn't solve any problem, because there's nothing here that we want to secure. And so this is the world we live in today. Again, the Howl's Moving Castle model, where this castle is here, but none of the things that we're trying to protect are there. So this moat is doing what for us, Kim? It's pretty big.
That would be 0.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we have a koi pond in there, and that's nice.
Okay.
Decorative, I don't know.
Maybe a swan jump,
Yeah, we could do things, but it's not doing anything security-wise. So this leads us to this concept of zero trust. All right, it's a super buzzword. We have a kind of running joke at Roundtable. Anytime Josh says the word zero trust, everybody has to either take a drink or throw up in their mouth, or do something, because it gets obnoxious. But it is a useful term, right? Which basically means, right, in the old days, if I was inside the castle, we kind of trusted you and said, okay, you're inside our little moat, so therefore you can access stuff. Okay, but in the modern world, why? So the idea is, I just don't trust this person at all. So anytime they want to come in, I have some things I have to do, because I can't assume that Kim is a trusted entity. So how do I give Kim access to stuff? Well, I have to first figure out, like, is her device okay? Then I need to make sure, is this really Kim? And then based on the context of which Kim is logging in, I say, here's the things you get access to, and here's the things you don't. Okay, so here's what assessing the device looks like. This is something called Duo. You can do this with Intune. You can do this with Okta. You can use lots of different services where Kim tries to log into our system. She's sitting there with Windows out of date and her Chrome browser out of date, and our conditional access system says, Kim, we're sorry, but you know what? You can't log into our systems unless your device is up to date with these things, okay? So that's one thing, and you can reject it and then tell them they have to update it. Next, I need to make sure that this is actually Kim, okay? And I'm gonna do that through multi-factor authentication. It's getting harder and harder. This is arguably the hardest thing we have to do. And this is the vector, for the most part, that the cyber criminals attack. They attack the identity. Because if they can, figure out what Kim's credentials are and authenticate as Kim, then they can do whatever Kim can do, okay? And so these are like lots of different forms of authentication. Security questions, passwords are terrible. One-time passwords via SMS or email are better, but still not very good. Software one-time passwords, little 6-digit codes you get on your phone, are better yet. Push notifications are good, but the best are what are called phish-resistant authentication. All right, and these are hardware keys or biometric authentication using something called passkeys. Passkeys are a wonderful thing because they're one of the first times that security people who have done a terrible job, speaking on behalf of the security community, because we make your lives very hard and we're still not very secure, okay? But we make it very hard. So we'll get to passkeys in a little bit. So the third thing we do is, okay, we verified Kim's on a device, we verified she's her, and we say, well, there's some other things we can know. Is she, in the US, or is she logging in from outside of the US? Is she on a device we know, or is she on a device we don't know? What application is she on? Does she just want to check her email, or does she want to log into a finance application or a CRM, right? And all of that I can kind of put together into a risk, and then I can say, maybe I'll require some additional authentication just to double check this is really Kim. And based on all of this context, I'm going to say, go ahead, check your email, check your calendar, but you know what, Kim? You're not getting into our CRM or our file system because I don't like the device you're on, I don't recognize it. And you can start to make these decisions. This is what zero trust is all about, is kind of being able to combine these factors to manage that. So now we get into a passkey, okay? I'll just talk everybody through this. I'll turn off the volume. So this is a Microsoft account. And it's my personal Microsoft account, so it's my personal email. And you're going to see me log in using my email address. And then you're going to notice something interesting, which is that it's never going to ask me for a password. Why is that? There isn't one. Okay, it's going to send me over to my phone. Now you're going to see the screen switch to my phone. Okay, and it told me I need to click 10. So I click 10. All right, this is called a number matching authentication. Very quickly, you may have noticed it Face ID'd me. So after it verifies that I put in the correct number, let me pause that real quick. Okay, it then Face IDs me, so biometric authentication at my phone, and now I'm logged in. This is a beautiful thing. Okay, it is very resistant to phishing because there's no password for the attacker to try to steal from you. Okay, it's very easy for you, because I have my phone, I don't have to remember a password, and all I have to do is click a button on my phone, hold it up to my face, and it logs me in. The attacker, in order to compromise this, okay, would need my phone and my face, right, to be able to do this, and would need the number from the page that I'm logging in on to verify that. That is really, really hard for an attacker to get all that stuff, but it's actually quite easy for the end user to use, which is what makes phish-resistant MFA really great. Now, this has been mandated since January of 2022 by the federal government. In fact, by the end of this year, by the end of 2024, all right, federal agencies have to meet zero trust criteria. So I know we're not generally thinking of the federal government as doing smart cybersecurity things. This one was celebrated highly by cybersecurity folks, myself included. We think this is incredibly smart, and this is what nonprofits should be doing as well, whether you are a federal agency, receive federal funding, or not. All right. And with that, Kim.
All righty, let's talk a little bit about AI.
presentation without AI. We can't, right?
In 2024, technology presentation?
Yeah, I
No.
think we got to talk a little bit about AI.
All right. So 2024 is the year that AI comes to work, right? 2023, people were like, what? ChatGPT? You know, my mom was asking about it. You using that? Right. So it was kind of this marvel, this thing that people were kind of amazed by. And we, believe me, started to do a lot of AI training in 2023. We have actually been doing it since 2022, but 2024 is the year that AI kind of came to work, and that organizations started to think, all right, we need to, do we need to work with this stuff? And are we going to, right? And how do we do that? And how do we even wrap our minds around this AI stuff? And oh God, there's so many of them and it's technical. It's really not that technical. But so, and here I'm talking about, when I talk about AI coming to work, you know, Salesforce Einstein's been around for many, many years. But I'm thinking more of the generative AI tools, and I've got them shown at the bottom: ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, now Claude 3.5. Okay, these are all, I'm talking about Shadow IT. You can sign up for free versions of any of these. So anyway, if we go to the next slide, AI makes doing a lot of work kind of easier, or let's say maybe not easier, less draining, right? It kind of takes the drudgery out of certain tasks, and people are able to get more done. For me, it cures blank page syndrome, which I suffer from horribly, right? In this recent study by Microsoft and LinkedIn, looking at AI at work in 2024, 75% of employees want it, and they're not waiting for their organizations to officially get it. All right. So 75% of people in this survey, and this combined all different kinds of industries and companies and organizations, people are already using it for some kinds of work tasks. All right. That's a large number. All right.
By the way, it's March 2024, which was
Yeah.
3 months ago, and
Yeah.
46% of them had started using it less than 6 months ago. So this is probably more at like 80 to 85%
Yeah.
at this point if you kind of follow the math.
Yeah. So people are adopting it. It's very gettable, right? So here's another poll. Poll number 1. Are you using AI to assist with any work-related tasks? And okay, we've got some no's here.
There's a second poll question in the same poll, by the way, which is, has your organization provided you with any guidance or policy about how you should or should not use AI for work? So there's 2 questions, a 2 poll.
Okay, and well, it looks like there's one poll that's kind of coming in. You know, it's a bit of a nail biter. Are people using AI for work-related tasks?
What's going on?
There's like one person that we know.
Who's the one? I want to know who you are.
Yeah. Who are you if you are using it? Tell us in the chat. The organization that has a policy. What we found, and Josh, I think you have a story about this.
Well, I just want to say this is so consistent with what we see. So Kim and I do in-person presentations anytime we can. We will ask the audience. I particularly like to do it if it's executive directors, CFOs, and COOs. We ask these same 2 questions, one after the other. And what you're seeing here is exactly consistent with the data that we've been getting. And the sad part is that it has not changed in 2 years. And it's very hard for me to understand what the challenge is here. But organizations, at this point, you must know that people are using AI tools. You're using them yourself. And yet, anyway.
Well, there's one yes, Josh. So
one yes, I'd love to know who you are. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. That's incredible. You are
an AI nerd prize, we would give it to you. All right. So one of the other resources that we have and our resources to go. And I think they provide it in the resources button.
They
But you
do.
can also drop in the link, and I dropped it in earlier. It shouldn't make you log into anything to get it, but this is a template for an AI policy. All right. At some organizations, I think leadership may be a little intimidated by the thought of like, oh God, do we have to come out of the closet and say like, okay, AI, sometimes people feel like they're cheating with, using AI, and that could include executive directors or leadership. But remember the internet? Remember how we thought we were cheating then too? And now would you say like, are you cheating by looking something up on Wikipedia? No, it's just, so, this is where we're going. This is where it's headed. It's not going away. So, it is healthy, we would say. You reduce more risk. It's not like, oh, I'm going to bring this super risky thing into my organization that, well, I'll trust myself with it, but my staff, oh God, what happens if we really come out and talk about this? I would venture to say, and I think Josh agrees, that having one of these policies, actually the governance, right? It's governance for AI, reduces your risk. Right? That's the best way to reduce risk and optimize opportunity. You give
I
people
don't,
guidelines. Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't thought of this analogy before, Kim. We'll see if this works. Imagine, we're all running organizations, 500,000 years ago, and the beginning of Homo sapiens. And, our organization, the fire suddenly became a thing, right? And it turns out that like half of our staff are using fire, right? Without any training or guidance. And we're like, I don't know if our organization's ready for fire. I don't know if I want to have a policy and teach people how to use fire, or tell them where they should start fires and where they shouldn't, and how to put a fire out and how to manage a fire. Like, let's just put our heads in the sand, and meanwhile, half of your staff are using fire. How is that going to turn out for your organization, right? Like, that's where we're at. Like,
Not well. And what in having an AI policy, and we really encourage, this is like multiple stakeholders. You want to get stakeholders from different parts of the organization. I've been asked questions like, who usually drives this forward? And I'd say it's often like somebody in operations often drives this type of thing forward, but not always. But having the conversation with other stakeholders and then deciding how are we as an organization going to use this tool? How many review cycles? Do we insist on a review cycle? Hint, answer is yes. For anything generated by AI. Are there certain tools that are not okay? What data is okay and not okay to use in AI? Right. So these kinds of questions are, I think are what you start to get at and drive consensus around at your organization when you create a policy. And that template will give you a very, very good start. So in the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about AI and risk. And all right, so when we think about AI, what's complex, what has risks, right? The generative, I think we need your annotation tool.
no problem.
So generative AI is pretty much what we're talking about. And it would most likely falls into the low complexity, right? You just sign up, but also lower risk. Why? Because you can review it before you let something out there. I'd say that's one of the greatest risks. That's your risk against AI confabulation, which is a fancy word for the AI lying and making things up. Okay, also AI bias. If you review it as an organization and and look for bias and consciously say, we are not going to put anything out there that might be biased in any way, I think you can then mitigate some of the risk of using AI to generate content, right? And that goes for images, which I will say can be a little bit more biased than the text, but I think using it and reviewing it is a way to mitigate the risks. Getting a little more complex is using data for, oh, your analogy continues, right? using data analysis tools or document summary tools. What makes it a little bit higher risk, first of all, it's a little bit more complex of a task. Makes it a little higher risk is that you have to verify it. And sometimes you're asking the AI because it does move at incredible pace, right? It can process a lot of data. So if you're giving it a giant public data set and saying, fine, do some exploratory analysis and find some trends in here that my organization can look at around, hunger in Suffolk County, right? You're going to have to verify that. And it's going to do a lot of like what looks like very magical data analysis for you. And a lot of it is right, but you have to verify it and it's harder to verify. It can also read through very long documents and give you summaries. Do you 100% trust them? No, you'll want to go and verify certain things. So it's a little bit more risk because there's more to verifying it. Automation is where you start to nuclear power, yes, is where you start to move into the zone where it's doing things for you. You cut out that review cycle with kind of agents performing actions. And Josh, you talk about Fantasia and what happens. AI is optimized to do what you tell it to do, right? So it will do it and it will try to do it well, just like Mickey Mouse and filling up buckets of water, right? And if that's what you're optimizing for, so you need to be able to, that very high risk, much more complexity, right? Any kind of automated decision making, you're going to be hearing about this more and more around like privacy rules and stuff. Like, do I get a mortgage or not? Like, that's complex. Does someone get, parole? Like, so certain things are going to go through these systems. Those have to be vetted and continually tested and, make sure that they don't have bias and they're not performing actions that you don't want it to, like filling your whole castle up with water. So why use AI though? What's the risk in not using AI? So we will say there are risks to using AI. You should be aware of them, but we very much feel there are risks for organizations to not use it, to not take advantage of these tools. And there was a study that was done with the Boston Consulting Group, and this is one of the first studies, was done in 2023, looking at, so what's the impact of using AI for like, lump them into knowledge worker types, right? And it's not that it makes everyone smarter, but it takes certain types of skills like writing, and it kind of makes some of the things more manageable for people. If you've ever had like difficulty putting your words, into an email or into a report, right? So what, Josh, so this is your animation. Do you want to just talk
Sure.
through it? Then you can animate while you're talking.
Sure. So let's say you've got, Kim, and she's like an A+ performer, and let's say we've got Kelly here, and she's a B+ performer, and then we've got Josh, and I'm like, a D+ performer, okay? And we all start using AI. What this Boston Consulting Group study showed, and this is over 3 months and over a range of knowledge work tasks. My guess is most of us are knowledge workers here, which means we're at computers generating documents, analyzing data, communicating via email and Slack and other things. Like, that's knowledge work, okay? So this is right in the heart of what we all do. And what happened after these 3 months is this interesting thing, which is that Kim improved a little bit, but she went from an A to an A+, or A+ to like an A++, like a little bit of improvement. But look at what happened to me and some of the other lower performers. We all became like B+ performers. Now, if you extrapolate that across an entire organization, and if this data actually does hold up, right, and replicates across use of AI across different kinds of organizations, that's incredibly powerful. Right? This is the kind of leveling up of the skills and productivity of your staff that like 2 years of learning development, none of which small nonprofits do anyway, right, would dream of achieving in terms of productivity. And it's happening inside of 3 months simply by the introduction of a tool. That is, again, the risk of not using AI at your organization, right, is not realizing these kinds of gains.
And there are other risks, right? So we showed you a slide earlier that employees are just using it anyway. But one of the things, and I have found this to be so true, all right, myself, I get done things I would not be able to get done, right? And I think Josh will say the same thing. Copilot users in a study that Microsoft did found it has to be 58% less draining than non-users. And I will say, I agree with that 100%. You know, reviewing a privacy policy, right? Do I still bring in my human review? Absolutely. Do I still bring in my judgment? Totally. But that's less draining than having to make something out of nothing. So I think the risks of not using it are there as well. And I think organizations, I would do well to think about that, but you want it governed, kind of keep coming back to that theme. So I think that's it.
Yeah, there's one other thing I realized I wanted to say. I don't know, Kim, if we have I'm trying to find a slide deck that would have it in it, the 100 million users. Let's see, maybe, hang on. Just want to see if I can find it very quickly. Just because I just want to make a quick point that I keep kind of thinking about. Yeah, here we go. So these things, this is how long it took these to get to 100 million users. And this is something that I am increasingly like thinking about in regard to AI. Okay. So these are all tools that reached 100 million users. Something you'll notice about these. Telephone, it was not primarily because of work. It was primarily because it allowed people to connect to each other. Same thing with the mobile phone. Netflix entertainment, this got to 100 million users because people have to watch movies on their devices, and mobile helped that as well. The mobile happening before this helped Netflix get to 100 million users. World Wide Web, 7 years, again, very useful, information. People use it to find restaurants, find friends online, things like that. Facebook, totally social. These things all got used for work, with the exception of Netflix, which probably disrupts work, but they all got used. So we get to AI, okay, and ChatGPT gets there in 2 months. And it is unlike any of those other things. It does not entertain us. It does not connect us to other human beings. It is not social. And the vast majority of it are using it for work. And I would defy anyone to think of another technology tool that you have adopted by your own volition without your employer asking you to help you work better. I don't know that that's ever happened historically, and it's happened, ChatGPT is at something like 250 million users, and that's not accounting for Copilot, Claude, and the other things. So that was the only other point. I just keep coming back to that, Kim, and how different of a tool AI is compared to anything we've seen before. So
yeah, no, it is truly kind of a different generation of technology. That said, learning how to use AI is not a technical skill. It's a question asking one. So if we have any questions, I think we left 1 whole minute.
It feels probably less dangerous than fire, and probably is more dangerous than fire. It's the other thing I would say about it. Anyway.
So we hope
the fire analogy. I'm gonna have to come back to that, Kim. I kind of like that. Like,
no, the fire works. I think it's very apt.
yeah.
So
I found out that half your staff was using fire without like any training or guidance. Like,
no policy for fire. They won't use it, right? Nah.
Yeah, knock yourself out. Mm.
So,
wow, this meat is really delicious. How did you prepare this?
all right, so I think we're just about at time. It's a pleasure to work with the Cerini team, and thank you, Kelly and the team there, for putting this together. And
apologies again for coming in at the last minute, buddy. Didn't mean to make you nervous. All right. Bye.
Bye.